What were you the god of again?
Welcome back, Dice Rollers and Role Players. It is Ryan from God of Crits. We are here talking government in Kingdom's Reign. If you're confused, go watch my other couple of videos that will explain and get you caught up to this point. Today we're going to be talking government types. Obviously, throughout the ages, there's different governments and different types of ways that politicians like to run their colonies and kingdoms and so forth. So for this game, Kingdom's Reign, I want to give a wide berth of options, but I also want to kind of do something generic and nothing out too crazy. So I kind of did a class and subclass system. So there are a total of 4 regular classes of government that you can have that I think boils down to almost all governments that have ever been in the world. So there's going to be the oligarchy. Oligarchy, the definition is going to be societies controlled and organized by a small class of privileged people with no intervention from the most part of society. So you can run on oligarchy if you wish. Your pro is going to be that your ability to capitalize on people who are useful to your cause grants you a certain amount of KP for every certain amount spent on your leading policy. So let's say every 50 KP you spend, you gain an extra 5, or whatever it is. Your con is going to be that your people think too alike because all your government is run by a certain class. And they're stubborn for that reason, and they don't want to move on, which means you are forced to have your colonizing checkmarks raised by X. Check my colonizing video out, but pretty much it's going to be harder to expand. So that's one type of government, and the 3 subclasses in that government is going to be a theocracy oligarchy, which is going to be theocracy is a system of governance in which religious leaders hold the topmost office in the land. The pro here is going to be you're going to get a certain KP towards building churches. And the con is going to be a certain penalty to magic. Again, we haven't really figured out these things. We need to go back and touch them up. But this is our general sense right now. And we're going to do that in our workshop videos. Magocracy is going to be the second sub-government of oligarchy. And it's going to be a form of government where only those with magical abilities could wield power in the political system. It's going to give you a certain amount of KP towards training wizards to 9th level. A con is going to be that your people can erect a shrine in your kingdom without a trade deal. So other kingdoms can just erect a shrine. They don't even have to ask you, which could be potentially problematic in aiding other colonies, especially if they're going for a religious victory. You could run a capitalist oligarchy, which is going to give your government, it's going to make a government that is ran by people who understand controlling the means of production on their land. This is going to have your production double yield for your first starting 6 hexes. Lastly, we talked in my last video, I talked about production and buff multipliers. This is going to double your buff multiplier. However, your con is going to be that you cannot claim ground X amount of hexes close to another kingdom. So as other kingdoms start to populate, you can't get near them a certain amount of hex. Hasn't figured it out yet. Next is going to be autocracy. This is our next big government again. So you could choose oligarchy. Option number 2 is going to be autocracy. An autocracy is ruled by a single entity with absolute power whose decisions are subject to neither external legal restraints nor regular mechanisms of popular control. I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's what an autocracy is. So it's pretty much just a dictatorship. A tyrannical government run by one person. The pro is that your people fall in line, which makes your government run smoothly. This is going to grant you advantage for all government resolution rolls, that big D100 roll I told you about. You'll have advantage on those. Your con is that your people are going to live in fear of your leadership. It's going to enforce your people's happiness lower by a certain amount per turn before any other factors. So that's going to hurt because you're going to have to keep your people happy, or at least a little bit, in order to not lose in this game. So, however, you can, subsections of that government are going to be a totalitarian, which is a political system that prohibits all opposing parties and outlaws any individual opposition to the state and its claims. This is going to grant you a certain amount of KP for every certain amount spent on your leading policy. So it's kind of a similar to the pro of oligarchy, exactly the same, probably a little more nerfed though. The con is going to add an additional X per turn to lowering your people's happiness. So your people's happiness is going to lower if you got autocracy, but then if you're a totalitarian autocracy, it's going to go even more. That's going to be a problem, but you get a lot of benefit out of it as well. Option number B is going to be a stratocracy, a government headed by military chiefs. So a military a general runs an entire colony. And this is going to give you a certain amount of KP per turn for military. Again, we might change that a little bit, but we'll worry about that in the workshops. The con is going to be you're going to get a disadvantage on your exploration rolls. That D100 for exploration, you're going to roll 2D100, take the lower. Next is going to be a clergy, a government ran by high-level clerics or paladins. It's going to gift you a small amount of KP towards finding gods and a small amount of KP towards founding schools of magic. It'll give you both of those, but it'll be a little bit less than you would presume because you're getting 2. The disadvantage, however, is it's going to give you disadvantage on all situational checks that don't involve magic or religion. Situational checks, of course, are going to be random per turn. You don't know what it's going to be. Could be super useful, could be super detrimental. Having disadvantage, not great. Third type is going to be a monarchy. A monarchy is going to be a royal family or group of families that are called the royalty, and they represent a national identity with power traditionally assigned to one of its individuals. So again, that's going to be England runs a monarchy, you could say. The pro to running a monarchy in this game is going to be that your royal family grows, and with it, so does your kingdom. It's going to grant you lower colonizing checks So let's say you have to put in 200 KP to get a new hex. You only have to put in 150, whatever it is. Your con is going to be that not everyone respects your royal family, making political uproar a problem, enforcing disadvantage on all government resolution rolls, that big D100 roll. Your first style of subgovernment is going to be mercantilism, a government devoted to producing and trading goods. Your buff multiplier for your production increases by a certain amount, another buff to production. Your con, however, is going to be you cannot use the skill counterinsurgency. That skill where you find out who's been spying on you, you are not able to use it because your borders are open to trade. I should say that not all open bordered countries are going to have this negative effect, but a mercantilism government is just having people come in and out. That's why they're getting the negative effect there. Next is going to be a metropolis, which is that your kingdom focuses on multiplying its people and human reproduction. For every 4 hexes connected outside of your main capital, you gain an X amount of bonus KP. So if you get these clusters of kingdoms out here, your KP per turn is going to start rising up. It's a long game plan that could really pay off. Your negative, however, is you're going to get a negative certain amount of KP towards military because your people don't want to fight. Next is going to be a shadow government. This is, again, still under monarchy. It is going to be that your kingdom trades in secrets and your royal family is one of drama and knowledge. You cannot be caught for espionage is going to be your pro, which is great. You can spy on whoever you want and you don't have to worry about it. Your con, however, is that you can gain no yield from your starting 6 hexes, which are, for a lot of kingdoms, going to be your main hexes. And you might not grow bigger than 12, so that's half of your buff multipliers you're just not getting. The fourth and final style of government that you can have is going to be a republic. It is going to be a rule by a form of government in which people or some significant portion of them have supreme control over the government and where offices of state are elected or chosen by elected people. Your pros are going to be that your people feel heard and represented. Your people are pretty much running your kingdom, and it's going to grant you half the consequences for any happiness penalties. So anytime you were going to take a happiness penalty, you half it immediately, which is pretty helpful. Your con, however, is going to be that power and discretion changes when new leaders are elected, as you don't have a single power force. This is going to enforce you to roll a d6 every 10 rounds, whichever it lands on, according to a chart, will half your KP you put into that policy for the next 10 rounds. This is bad, potentially. If you're going for a military victory and you roll that first d6 and it lands on 2, which is military, that means that every KP you put in is going to be halved into military, which could really hurt if that's what you were going for in your victory condition. Your first style of subgovernment is a democracy. This is where power is spread through the whole population or all eligible members of a state, typically through election representatives. You are going to gain double KP benefits for any event you host. Events are going to be a entertainment thing where you can have other kingdoms join you into some sort of thing, and you'll get a bunch of benefits if other kingdoms join you, and they'll take a little bit as well. This could be something like a tournament of champions in a coliseum, you could say. Your negative is going to be minus 10% of KP for your kingdom. Oof, that's going to be rough. So if you would have had 100, you're now only going to have 90 per turn to spend, which is going to be tough. The second subsect is going to be a federation, which is going to be political divisions that are created to rule over specific legislations. Your pro is that you can choose one pro from another branch of government. Holy crap. The branches of governments, again, are going to be your 3 subsects of governments. But you can pretty much, with a federation, go and cherry pick whichever one you like. Say you come up here and you like a capitalist. Boom, I'm taking the capitalist one and I'm plugging it into my government. However, the negative is that you roll an additional d6 for your Republican penalty chart up here. Oh. The final one for a republic is going to be a frontier. You explore the horizons, and that is your kingdom's most valuable asset. You seek to know the unknowable. This is going to give you, you're going to gain back half of your KP from an exploration find. That big D100 roll, let's say you put 80 KP in, and you rolled below an 80, you got it, you're going to gain back 40 of that KP. That's going to be nice, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of exploring. The disadvantage, however, will give you disadvantage on all espionage checks. So if you're trying to spy into another kingdom, you're going to have disadvantage on that. Well, that is all we have for our government styles. I'm curious, put in the comments what you guys think is maybe overpowered, maybe underpowered. Again, we have not balanced any of this. We're just kind of coming up with ideas. Some of them still vague. Some of them still need work. We're definitely going to come back to this in some of our workshops, so stay tuned for that. Until the next time, roll on, gamers.